Well, hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. We're a day early because I'm heading down to Walt Disney World tomorrow. So, we are going to talk about a fun topic a little bit early. Let me get everything set here and we will get started. Dun, 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 dun. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter show today because I got to get everything in before I scoot. All right. Hey, Margie. Hope you're doing well. Hello. All right. Let's do this. Here we go. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 67 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Mike Rallman from the Be Our Guest podcast, headed down to Walt Disney World here in just about 24 hours. And actually, on today's mini podcast, I am going to be checking in for my flight down to Florida during the show because that's right. I have early bird check in. I do that every time because I have to get a window seat. Now, those of you that have been with the Be Our Guest podcast for our whole run of 13 plus years, remember that way back in the day, this guy would never, ever get on an airplane. I was scared to death to fly. I would not do it. I would drive to Florida every single time we went down. We went down a few times a year. We would load up we had a 2006 Trailblazer. Sometimes we took my in-laws Monte Carlo. Sometimes we pulled a trailer that my dad had, behind with us, and it was an ordeal back in the day to go down to Florida. It was a 14 and a half hour drive if we really hauled. Typically about 15 hours from where we lived. So I used to never fly, but then I got older and my back couldn't take it anymore. So now I fly. So the irony of the fact that I have to check into my flight during a patron podcast is not lost on me. But I do buy early bird flights because here's the deal. I do have to make some compromises. I fly and I'm comfortable with flying now because I've done it many times over the past, I would say 5 years. But I do always sit in a window seat because I not that I have any control over anything, but I do like to see where I'm going. I like to be able to I know this is like the Dr. Rick commercial that's on all the time nowadays. Like, dude, I feel like I'm seen. I do like to see the interstates that I drive on. I do like to see my subdivision as we take off over St. Louis. I like to see the bridge that I drive over all the time. I like to see the shopping mall that's abandoned from above. I like to go over Busch Stadium and see the arch and tell Mallory every time when she's with me, hey, look, there's Busch Stadium. There's the arch. There's where your mom and I went on our first date downtown in that hotel. There's a restaurant at the top. Yeah, I feel like Dr. Rick is talking right at me in that progressive commercial. But anyway, I will be checking in at 11 o'clock even. So we're about 9 minutes out. So if I pause there for a minute, this is live podcasting. So here we go. But today is September 29th and excited for the 50th this weekend. A lot of folks are heading down today. I'm staying in the office here, getting a little bit more work done, but my good buddy and colleague, Ben Lappin, will be taking care of my guests while I'm down over the weekend. So shout out to Ben. Thank you so much for covering my guests. He's a great agent, and I know everybody's in good hands over the weekend while he is sitting in my seat here at the travel agency. So it's always good to have a colleague that you can know and trust, and he takes good care of us. So what's going on? Summer has returned here in St. Louis, here in the Midwest. It's hot. The high or the last couple days has been at least 90 degrees, 92 a couple days ago. Today it's going to be 90 again. We had that taste of fall last week. I think the highs were in the upper 60s. It was so nice. You got out the sweatpants, the hoodies. It was wonderful. But now we're back in, summer again. So hopefully fall comes back again real soon. It is definitely fall festival season here in the Midwest. Homecoming for our high school this weekend. Of course, I'll miss that. Our high school football team had a miracle comeback football win this past Friday night. It was incredible at a away game, 99-yard drive with less than 2 minutes left. to win the game with no timeouts. It was amazing. It was so cool. And we have a big football game this Friday, which I will be tuning in and watching on Twitter from the Magic Kingdom. Even though Enchantment will be going on, I'll be just as curious about the high school football game as I will the fireworks. So I'll be doing double duty there. But yeah, it's definitely a busy time of the year. It's an exciting time of the year during the fall. And I'm just excited to see everybody down in Walt Disney World this weekend. So I hope you're doing well wherever you are. Maybe you have some fall festivals in your part of the country, your part of the world. Maybe you have some rodeos. I know a lot of places have those in the fall. Maybe your church or parish is having a picnic. We have a lot of those here. How about those St. Louis Cardinals? Maybe you're a baseball fan. If you're a Cardinals fan, it's a pretty crazy time. 17 baseball wins in a row. That is unprecedented. You may not be a baseball fan and you may say, oh, 17 in a row is not a big deal. In baseball, for that to happen, you have to be so lucky. You have to be so fortunate for things to just fall in like the dominoes to fall the right way that many times, because baseball is a game of skill, but it's also many times just luck has to happen. The ball has to hit so many things have to just fall in your favor. I mean, the ball could be fair or foul by inches, and that could determine a win or a loss. An umpire could say for out, and that could be, win or loss. In 17 wins in a row, the Cardinals were not going to make the playoffs. Last night, we did clinch a playoff spot. So that was it's an amazing time to be a Cardinals fan here in St. Louis. We're excited for that because, again, I talked about this, I think about 2 or 3 months ago. Actually, I think I talked about this in April, that being a St. Louisan, our identity is really tied to the St. Louis Cardinals because the Cardinals have always been here. And we have been scorned by the NFL, by the football team twice. We had the St. Louis Cardinal football team. They left and went to Arizona. We had the St. Louis Rams. They even won a Super Bowl here. And then they left and went back to Los Angeles, which my dad still works for them. Traitor. Just kidding. I love my dad, but he still works for them. So the Cardinals have always been here. They're a very proud team, one of the best teams ever, second best franchise in the history of Major League Baseball behind the Yankees. So we're very proud of our team. That's kind of our identity. So we rally around the birds on the bat. So we're excited for that. 17 in a row, and we're in the playoffs again. So yes. Anyway, let's get to last week's topic. And then I have a fun topic for this week that I want to talk about with you guys and see how much we can connect on that. Last week, I talked about some of my jobs as a kid. I talked about umpiring, cutting grass, shoveling snow. And you know what? To me, that's what everybody did. All my buddies did this. Like, we all went up and umpired. And if you weren't a baseball player, like I was a baseball player, but some of my buddies were soccer players. So they refereed soccer. And in the wintertime, we refereed basketball games, in the elementary school gyms. That was actually kind of cush because the games were shorter. It was, you weren't out in the elements. It wasn't 100 degrees. You weren't, in a dust bowl where I was at We Hop baseball fields. So it was kind of interesting, but it was funny how we spent our money because we just blew it. We spent it on baseball cards and pepper bellies, our umpire money, and a waterbed. All right, let's get to the feedback from last week's show. Michelle Camber, who I will see this weekend down at Walt Disney World, she says, I also bought a waterbed with my first job earnings. Gotta love the 80s. That's exactly right. Everybody had a waterbed. Mine was it was just a single waterbed, again, from a store called Sweet Dreams that was just in our town, and everybody had a waterbed. And again, I remember mine had to be, it was called unbaffled, which meant, because you could, like, back in the day, they had you could get baffled, which meant it didn't weigh very much. It was very firm, but the thing was, as a 14-year-old or 13-year-old or 12-year-old, I don't know how old I was, probably 13. I wanted that sucker to rock. If I was going to get a waterbed, I wanted it to be like a waterbed. So I got the totally unbaffled bed, and it was riding an ocean in a hurricane. It was crazy. So yeah, I got my waterbed, and so did Michelle. She said, also, been meaning to chime in on the new Coke Zero. I was nervous about the change, but really seemed to like it. It seems more crisp or something. Hope to see you at the 50th. And I'll see you there, Michelle. I'm heading down in 24 hours. I'm hitting the button here. And of course, I'm still 2 minutes too early. So I'll move on to the next piece of feedback. But Michelle, thanks for being a patron. I appreciate it. Marlessa, who is actually on an airplane as we speak, I believe. She says, love this topic, Mike. I have a fun story about a childhood job that also has a connection to my first trip to Walt Disney World. When I was about 9, my dad surprised me with the news that he, My mom and I would be going to Walt Disney World the following summer. That was right about the time when I had really fallen in love with all things Disney, the movies, the TV shows, the characters, and the idea of finally going to the parks. I decided that I wanted to make some of my own money for souvenirs. So I started my own greeting card business. I charged $1 a card and mainly made them for family, family friends, etc. I don't remember how much I made in all, but it was definitely over 50 bucks when I was all said and done. Shout out to my Nana's one friend who I still recall ordered 20 birthday cards from me. To this day, I still remember the immense pride I felt when I was able to spend the money that I had earned at Walt Disney World. I don't remember everything I bought at Disney, but I do remember buying a mirror featuring the Disney princesses at the Contemporary Resort and a few pins, two of which are hanging above my desk as I type this. I still credit that experience as being critical to establishing the work ethic I have today, including my desire to accomplish any goals I set out to achieve. Plus, what greater motivator could a kid have than Disney? Marlessa, I love that. And that reminds me, okay, so I don't remember doing this often, but only some people will get this. Children of the 80s especially. So I had a Commodore 64. I talk about that all the time, but that's what I played with when I was a kid. I played a lot of baseball and I messed around the Commodore 64. And I'm watching the clock because I got hit the 11 o'clock thing, right? Exactly. So on my Commodore 64, I might have mentioned this last week, but I had a printer and I had a couple of programs called Print Shop and Print Master. And what you could do is just like Marlessa said, you could print out greeting cards, you could print out posters like on 8x10, 8.5 by 11 posters. You could do even banners, that said like happy birthday or go Cardinals. And you could put like a cardinal bird on each end, like a graphic, and you could sell those. And I did remember selling those to friends for like $1 a poster, like $1 a page, or like a banner for like I can't remember what I charged for. The thing was, think about how much ink costs. Oh, let's see what I get here. Oh, come on now. Think about what ink costs nowadays. Check in. Hang on. This is exciting. I got to acknowledge that I'm not bringing anything. Oh, yay. A group 58. I'm in. Cool. All right. So I'm official. I get to go fly to Florida. Okay. So what was I talking about? Oh, yeah, Print Shop, Print Master. So I was probably using up expensive ink and paper. Paper seemed to not be that big of a deal back in the 80s. Well, because the thing was, I wasn't buying it. My parents were. That's probably why I never worried about this stuff. Like when we ran out, and remember, paper back in the day was like tractor feed paper. Remember, it had those like little circles on each side, and then you would tear it off, as it went through, and it had because it was called tractor feed, and it was a dot matrix printer, which meant is Epson printer. I remember that. So anyway, I did the same thing more or less. I sold stuff on Printmaster and Print Shop, but not as much as you. I mean, shoot, you had a business there. That was awesome. So see you actually tomorrow too. So many folks. Trisha Hellwig, hey, thanks for being a patron. And you always chime in, and I always appreciate that so very much. My first job was babysitting, and I would advertise through church. I just remember Nickelodeon cartoons were a big deal with the kids I watched. If I never see another SpongeBob episode again, it will be too soon. Let me back you up, Trisha. My nephews, who are now like 18, who I used to help babysit with my wife when we were first dating because they were babies, they grew up watching Nickelodeon all the time, and it was always SpongeBob. And maybe it's because I'm a Disney snob. I don't get SpongeBob. I think it's so weird. And they always had it on. And they still do. Like, I mean, they're in high school and they will still have SpongeBob on in the background at their house. I don't get it. I don't know. I mean, maybe some people love SpongeBob. He seems like he's whiny. I don't know. I think maybe you had to grow up on it. Maybe I'm too old, but I'm with you. Like most Nickelodeon shows just, I think it's because I'm a Disney fan that I'm like biased against Nickelodeon just because of my love for Disney, and I don't mean to be, but SpongeBob for some reason really gets me. I just don't understand it. I don't even know how to put it into words. And she says also, if I had a golden statue, I'd be found in the Ewok village outside of Star Tours. I love Star Wars, and it's fitting because I'd be a gold like C3PO, so I'd be worshipped. There you go. Like in Return of the Jedi. I get where you're going, Trisha. Very nice. You'd be in your little chair floating around in the Ewok village under the AT-AT. Perfect. Nice, Trisha. Thanks for all the feedback. If you have feedback on today's show or any show, just drop by patreon.com/BRGS podcast and you will be on next Thursday show. And there will be a show next Thursday right before I head to Chicago for the Chicago Marathon. It's going to be crazy. I'll be home for a few days and then headed up to Chicago to run 26.2. But let's get to today's topic. Today's topic, real quick. I wanted to talk about VCRs and VHS tapes from back in the 80s. Now, this is only going to be maybe triggering memories for some of us that are about my age, but maybe some of the younger folks. So when I was a kid, again in the 80s, I still remember the first day that we got a VCR. I remember the first day that we got cable. Back in the day where we lived, it was called Cencom cable. I don't even know what that stood for. Eventually, it became Charter cable. And then I think Charter cable now is actually Spectrum cable, which is what we have where I live. But anyway, when we got a VCR, because my dad, when I look back, it's kind of scary, right? When you look back at your parents to you, my dad, I didn't realize it at the time, but my dad was a gadget and technology nerd. He always was buying the newest technology and the newest gadget kind of thing. And that's exactly how I am, but I didn't realize it. Like I'm always like, I'm not like my dad. I'm exactly like my dad. I had an iPod when they were first coming out. I had to have the new iPhone when it first came out. I always wanted to try stuff out, an iPad. A lot of stuff's Apple because they drive a lot of technology. But my dad was the same way. And I remember he got this again, he got this VCR, but I remember that it was in like two pieces. And I don't know why, but it had like two pieces. And the one piece was a piece that loaded the big tape, right? The VHS tape. The other half of it had kind of like a tuner to it, as I recall. Again, I was younger, so I was probably in elementary school. But the thing was, he also got it with a camera. Now, again, video cameras nowadays are on your smartphone, okay? Small, just right there in your pocket. No, and my dad took this thing out to our basketball games, our baseball games. He took it to Walt Disney. He took it to us with the one day I went to Walt Disney World in 85 when we went down for spring training. He took it to the spring training trip to Florida. And we have some videos somewhere. I'll have to find it because I got to ask him. When my parents got divorced, stuff got scattered to the winds, but I'm sure he has it somewhere. But this thing, excuse me, when we went out, it wasn't a small camera. It was like the local news team. So you took the VCR with you and had a shoulder strap. And so it would hang down over your shoulder like a big kind of purse. And so you would take the whole VCR with you. You'd load a blank tape into the VCR. It had a battery the size of like a notebook. And then we're good. And then you would have this long cable up to the camera. The camera sat on your shoulder because it was so big and you held it. I mean, it was a big camera, probably a foot and a half long with a kind of a boom mic on the front of it. I mean, I still remember, but it was so cool back in the day because you could shoot live like in your living room. You could see it on the TV if you hooked it up right. It was so fun. So that was kind of the first VCR. And man, you felt like you were like you were like George Lucas. You had a whole studio in your house. You could make a movie. So I do remember that. Now, talking about VCRs and VHSs, that was kind of how you first watched your movies, right? And so when I was thinking about like VHS tapes, especially, I watched a lot of VHS tapes growing up, and it wasn't a lot of purchased VHS tapes. As I recall, what we used to do a lot was we didn't have movie channels. We called them movie channels. We didn't pay for like Cinemax or HBO or Showtime or I can't remember all. There were a lot of those, pay movie channels. Again, you guys know I don't watch a lot of movies. I really didn't when I was a kid. We had we just called it basic cable. So we had like the Weather Channel. We had WGN. We had WTBS. We had WOR out of New York. And we had all the basic channels that you had. Probably most people had the same channels, TBS, stuff like that. So my dad, again, would buy all these blank tapes. I remember they're like Maxell tapes. I guess they were probably the cheapest, like Fuji. And he could program that VCR. I know a lot of people could program their VCRs. He could. And we had, no kidding, no less than 10 full tapes of nothing but Leave It to Beaver episodes because it was on WTBS each day. So my dad had it programmed to where it would record WTBS at that specific time. Now this wasn't TiVo. You couldn't go in, younger kids. You could go in and just type in, the name of the show, and it would record the show that way. No, you had to, you'd say manually start the VCR at 3:58 and stop at 4:32, and that's exactly what it would do. And that's how it would work. And it would physically start the tape, stop the tape. And so we had all these tapes of Leave It to Beaver. And of course, the funny thing is that, I spent so many years because, my dad loved the show. So I was always watching it with him. Like as we were recording it, you know, we were watching it. You had to do that. You had to watch it as it recorded. So it was on the TV. And I kind of got to like the show. I liked all the shows my dad liked. My dad liked the Waltons. So I'd watch that with him and stuff like that. But we had all these tapes that he would tape from the TV. And the thing is I think back on to my dad, he was preserving those shows because I was guessing that at the time he was worried they would go away and they were shows from his childhood. He wanted to preserve that. He wanted to always have a physical copy so he could watch Leave It to Beaver, whenever he wanted, or the Waltons, and stuff like that. And you know what? When I go back and think about this now, and I don't have any of those tapes, he does. I still think he does have those tapes somewhere. Is that what the valuable part for somebody like me that's a fan of retro culture? It's not the Leave It to Beaver episode, believe it or not. You know what the interesting part is? It's the commercials that are in between. The part that you really wouldn't want, it's the product that's advertised from, say, 1987. Like what was being advertised on a national cable show showing an old 50s sitcom, and what were the prices? So the commercials is what you wanted to get rid of at the time. But if you just didn't, chop out your commercials, now if you find that tape, probably the most interesting part are the commercials to see what they were selling at what price and what was popular in popular culture. So that's kind of interesting on old VHS tapes. Something else I wanted to talk about. So here's something I did, kind of like my dad. And I did this again, it showed what a nerd I was. I did this religiously every single Friday night for years. I probably did this for 4 or 5 years. Now, I don't know if you had something like this in your town. You may have, but you may not have. And I wish my dad probably still has these tapes. I haven't even thought about this for years, but I thought about it this morning when I was running, when I thought about doing this show. So every Friday night, our local sportscaster, we had a sportscaster in St. Louis on Channel 2. Back in the day when I was a kid, his name was Zip Rizeppa. That was his name, the sports guy. Zip Rizeppa. And every Friday night, he did what was called the Zippo Awards. Zippo, the Zippos. And no kidding. So now again, this was like in the 80s, like probably the mid to late 80s. So this was before really Sports Center was a thing. You didn't have all these, shows that you have 20. This was way before like YouTube and all this stuff. So what he would do is every Friday night he would compile like a blooper reel basically with like funny music as the music bed. And it was from all sports. And it wasn't just, I mean, he would have, of course, like crazy, baseball players going for a foul ball, flying into the seats, or, like a fan trying to catch a ball in the seats and, spilling his nachos on the guy next to him, or, a football player trying to catch a ball, taking out the ref. But he would also have things like water skiing, squirrels, like a chimpanzee trying to dunk a basketball, at a zoo or something, or, like a elephant trying to flip a watermelon or something. So he had all these crazy sports related clips each week, with like crazy funny music behind it. And they were the funniest things. So I still remember his tagline was the best, the worst, and the weirdest performances of the week. And he would boom, do the Zippos. And it was about a 2-minute little package. I recorded this every single week. I got to go on YouTube. I bet you it's on YouTube. I haven't even thought about this since I was probably 10. I'm gonna have to go on YouTube. It was called the Zippo Awards. It had like a yellow little screen that was like it was just like it was like he made it on. He probably made this thing on, I don't know, just like some basic Commodore 64 program. So anyway, I taped that all the time. So and I never missed it. Like I had to be home at Friday night for the 10 o'clock news to get that. And I actually filled the 2 hour tapes. That's how many of them I had. And they were like 2.5 minutes long each. So I had, and that was the kind of thing back then is that you save those things. And I never did ever go back really and watch them, other than like that 5 year period. I would go back and watch it that week and be like, oh God. And my friend across the street, we always watch those things all the time. But once we kind of grew out of it, once we were like 15 and 16 and started driving, those tapes were never watched again. I mean, they were really watched for there when we were watching them because we'd watch them and watch them and watch them, but then they just sat. And it's kind of sad that we spent that much time. Also, I remember the first time that we went to a video rental store after we had our VCR. And the thing was, you had all these boxes of Star Wars and all these movies, all over the place. And the thing was, I remember the first place we went in, it was called Movies to Go. And we couldn't rent any movies because my parents didn't have any credit cards. Like my parents didn't want to have a credit card because they didn't want to go into debt. They use cash for everything. And most movie rental places back in the day, you had to have a credit card on file to kind of guarantee that you would bring the movie back. Because if you recall, movies back then to buy a movie, they were like $80 or $90. They weren't like $10 like they are now at Walmart. They were expensive. So I get it. But eventually we got one for like the grocery store, had a little movie department, and then you could just get a card and we could rent movies there. But I do remember that. It was kind of disappointing at first. You couldn't rent movies from the popular places because, my family didn't have credit cards. So it's kind of interesting. I kind of want to close this out on something that's kind of replaced. Of course, streaming has replaced VCRs. It went to DVDs and all that, and streaming has replaced all that. But there's something I want to throw out there. Maybe some people are using this, maybe some people aren't. I've mentioned it maybe a couple times. It's a little app that's called Pluto TV. This is an absolutely free app, and it's called Pluto TV, like the planet, Pluto. And what it is, my dad loves this app, and my dad's cheap, kind of like me. And all it is, it's like if you look at it, it's almost like a cable TV guide setup. It's almost just like cable TV, but it's got a ton of like old retro channels on it. And it's totally free. Now it's different than like streaming or like going on Netflix, because if you go on Netflix or if you go on Disney Plus, you have to go in and think about it for a second. You got like, what do I want to watch? Like if I go on Disney Plus, what do I want to watch? I got to select something. Here's the difference. Here's why I like Pluto TV. Pluto TV, there's channels that are just the Love Boat, and it's 24/7 Love Boat episodes, or Three's Company, 24/7 Three's Company episodes. There's a Amazing Race channel. It's constant Amazing Race. Survivor. There's constant 24/7 Survivor shows. And you got all these old shows. Andy Griffith, 24/7 Andy Griffith. And if you go on American Gladiators, so you go on there, they got all these channels of all these shows that you might have liked back in the day. And here's the joy of it. I think this is what makes it work for me, is that it's kind of background. It's like a background loop, like at Walt Disney World. You don't have to think about it. If I'm working in the office, I'll throw on one of those shows, Survivor, Amazing Race, or Love Boat. I don't have to watch it, but I just, I have it on and like I kind of listen to it and it keeps me company. And it's absolutely free and it brings back good memories. And it kind of goes to show that we kind of missed it back in the 80s. Like I think, and even in the 90s, I was one of those people that when a movie came out, I had to have it like a physical copy. You know how many copies I have of the Star Wars movies? I have the Star Wars movies on VHS. I have the Star Wars movies on DVD, and I have the Star Wars movies on Blu-ray. And the only really reason I subscribe to Disney Plus is because I can watch the Star Wars movies at a click of just clicking my remote. It's crazy. But we thought we had to have all these physical copies. We had to preserve things back then on VHS tapes. And look where we are in 2021. Everything is at our fingertips. on kind of a similar topic, Mallory was jumping in the shower the other night. We have Echoes in all the bathrooms and the living room and stuff, Amazon Echoes, and we subscribe to Apple Music, and they're connected to the Echoes. And every time she jumps in the shower, she just yells out whatever song she wants. She makes playlists and she just kicks in a playlist while she's taking a shower, and there it goes. And she plays it super loud, so we hear it in the living room. And I turned to my wife and I said, how cool would that have been when we were kids to be able to just yell out to the air and listen to any song literally that we wanted to listen to? Like when we were kids, again, this sounds like we're grumpy old parents, but when we were kids, we were lucky to have a cassette or two that might have 12 songs on the cassette. But you know what? Here's the thing though. Here's what's different. We adored those 12 songs. I mean, those were our songs because that's all we had. When you have 50 million songs at your fingertips, you probably don't appreciate the songs quite as much. Is there a trade-off? I don't know. So let me know what you think. Did you have any experiences with VHS tapes? Did you record anything off your local TV? What do you recall about your first experience with physical media, VHS tapes, and all that? I want to hear your memories. So please do take the time this week. Drop by patreon.com/BRGuest podcast. Your feedback is super important to me. That's what I love to read on next week's show. I love hearing from you. Really, it makes my day. So thanks again for your support. I hope to see a lot of folks down at Walt Disney World. If you're not making it down for the 50th, do follow at BRGuestMike on Instagram. I'm going to be bringing you all the coverage because I want you to be a part of the magic. So until we talk again next week, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. All righty, everybody. See you later. I do love some Pluto TV.